what is the main value on the hosting operator side that you provide? Why do people want to work with Hashbranch to streamline the operation? HashrateUp, hardware sales, advisory, hosting, and site brokerage. Find new and used ASIC deals through the website and the Telegram channel below. Make smarter decisions with HashrateUp. Welcome back. Whenever I see this man, I have to laugh because he just makes me smile. Hello, Tom. You are CEO, Director, Executive Manager, and Most Valued Employee, as you just told me, at Hashbranch. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, and we'll have to work on those titles a little bit, but I think those are fine for now.
I think my favorite was aggravator.
Aggravator in chief. Yep.
Aggravator in chief at Hashbranch. Tom, you guys are sponsoring the show, so I want to take this opportunity and formally thank you once more that you guys are doing this, because it really helps with the consistency and helps me put out the content that I love to talk about very regularly. So thank you very much for doing that continuously. Today, we want to talk a bit about your company and Hashbranch and how you guys have sort of developed and where you are now in the marketplace. Before we do that, though, let me quickly share my screen and see where we are. You are joining me, and Bitcoin price just dipped below 100,000. Somehow this is your fault, I'm sure. We are recording at 923,486 block height, and we are now at $41 per petahash per day exactly. The previous difficulty adjustment was minus 2.4%. Yeah, we're about 8% in, and blocks have been found very quickly at plus 7%. What's the vibe like at Hashbranch, Tom? 41 hash price, sub $100,000 Bitcoin price. Everybody's freaking out. How are you doing?
We're doing great. So the vibe's good. The vibe's strong. I think we don't tend to look at short-term hash price and Bitcoin volatility as much because we see mining as it's a longer-term game. Even investing just in Bitcoin is a longer-term game. So, personally, when the price of Bitcoin drops, I get excited. I can stack at a lower cost. And then on the mining side, when hash price drops and if it holds for a while, we see a reflection in dropping prices of machines and kind of better entry points for mining. So I think for us, like things are exciting, and when the market moves, the mining industry moves as well. So
yeah, I agree. Cheap machines, all that jazz about investing when nobody really wants to. That's usually the right entry point. Right. So to start off with, Tom, what is the main value for hosting operators that you guys provide? Because I know you're sort of in the middle without being just a pure middleman between the operator and the customer, the end customer, the ASIC owner. What is the main value on the hosting operator side that you provide? Why do people want to work with Hashbranch to streamline the operation?
yeah, I would say the primary thing, the thing we kind of got started with was very basically, we fill hosting operators' rack space with high quality machines that are owned by our clients. We have a demand pipeline that keeps growing, and so we're constantly working with operators to help them, fully utilize their capacity that's available. That's kind of the primary thing. But the way we do this is really, really important. So we've structured it in such a way where we're taking a lot of the administrative burden on off of the operators' plates and allowing them to just really do what they do well, right? A lot of our operators, they're really great at identifying, energy that they can build infrastructure on. They're really great at building infrastructure, and they're really great at actually running a mining facility and keeping things online and doing a lot of the on the ground work that it really takes to keep these machines humming. Where we step in is we kind of are really helping them with I would say like front office tasks. So things like client administration, billing, making sure our contracts are, excuse me, are streamlined and kind of allow for the dynamics of mining. So things like growing fleets and adding additional units, there's a lot of complexity there. And then The way we do this is we've actually built an entire software platform specifically designed for managing assets and kind of tracking them, managing deployments, managing uptime calculations, and how you apply credits and all of the I would say the behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people don't see. We built a full software system that allows us to really scale that up. So like as an example, one of the things we'll do for both the operators and customers that plays a really critical role is we take on what we call like L1 and L2 support. So what we think about is like level one support is like very simple things that we can just solve before it needs to even be escalated to the ground team. Things like reboots and changing pools and just like the very simple things that don't really require an escalation to the ground team. Level two is kind of like, hey, it might be a little more complex, but it's still in our wheelhouse to just solve and make the process simple. And then we kind of synthesize any L3 requests, like those things that are, hey, it's more complex and it actually might require someone on the ground team to take a look, maybe replace a fan or do a diagnostic. We provide that to our operators like in a very clean format so that instead of them having to like be a customer support person and a diagnostic and a tech and all these things. We're kind of just giving them, hey, these are the explicit things we need for these serial numbers at this location, and here's what we've done already. We found that it's helped our operators tremendously, just like managing their workload, and it's also helped our customers just have a better experience at the end of the day. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
other
I
stuff
mean,
we do, but those are kind of the main things.
oftentimes the service that you guys provide is sort of the angle that people usually take when they talk about it is the customer angle, right? You have a hosting facility, and then so I think it's helpful to understand what usually happens, right? You have a hosting
Right.
facility. Now you take on demand from people who own one machine, 5 machines, 10 machines, right? That's typically demand that costs you a lot of time and effort per machine, right? Which is why a lot of hosting operations have a minimum order quantity of 100, which is, of course,
Right.
super inaccessible to a vast majority of the market out there, or vast people retail that want to start investing, right? So but if you do take on that crowd, right, what happens if a breaker fails? Now,
Hmm.
all of the clients that monitor their ASICs realize, oh, my hash rate is down, and you get 50, 100 tickets, and you have to answer each and every one of them. And if you don't have the automation, if you don't have the proactive communication, now that becomes very, very difficult and time consuming and expensive, and it's not worth it, right? So that's where, if you allow me, the value that I see to hosting operators is they can make use of that kind of demand without the need, without the extra hassle, right? And we can actually pair really high quality operators that want to be good at what they do with retail, make them accessible to retail.
Yeah, no, that's exactly correct. And I can say, the operators we work with, um, they don't love when customers' machines are down. It's not a good feeling. It's not great at all. But the reality is that, like to your point, when you have clients with smaller amounts of units, maybe different expectations that were set, maybe they bought the unit from some random person and maybe it sat idle for a while and then or maybe it ran somewhere and then it got deployed and there's a lot of things that can go wrong that generally aren't the operator's fault nor their responsibility. And so we kind of step in and say like, hey, there's a right way to do this, and then there's a way that you're going to do this and maybe set yourself up poorly. So we try to get ahead of a lot of that, and it comes in a bunch of flavors from our business model as well as like just some of the things we've learned. So like as an example, deployments are a really like interesting part of the process in what I would say like your mining investment journey. I think a lot of customers, people investing in mining, they think it's something like, well, I put dollars or Bitcoin in, and I should see hash rate immediately, something akin to like a purchasing crypto or like staking or something. Like that's how they think about it. When in reality, like there's a whole supply chain that basically gets kicked off once that initial payment is made and the contracts are signed. And part of it is like the deployment, right? So like even if you get the units, um, let's say they're a good price, they're high quality, they land. Well, there's a lot of complexity in coordinating deployments, right? If you have operators who are designed for what they do really well, right? You know, running mining equipment, low cost power, keeping high uptime. They're not generally like designed for rolling deployments of random unit quantities and random machine types. And like coordinating that is kind of a complex problem. And so we kind of step in and help. You know, deployment coordination is like a very simple thing to say, but it's actually a complicated problem that we've identified and helped our operators solve, where we help them forward plan like what's coming, not just like what shows up on pallets.
Mm.
We have operators who, you know, we talked to like earlier this year or even last year that were, you know, calling us saying, hey, I've got like pallets of units showing up. I have no idea whose these are because they didn't tell me who's the, and this is like millions of dollars worth of hardware and the pallets keep showing up. Can you help us? Right. So that's kind of some of the stuff that happens. And all of this trickles down to the customer experience at the end of the day. Like if I, you know, had an expectation and then, you know, maybe 80% of my machines are up, but the other 20%, I don't know what's going on. Like I'm immediately going to assume the worst when in reality, it might be just like, hey, there's a deployment timeline. Hey, some of these had failures upon arrival and they're getting kicked off into an RMA pipeline. Like there's a lot that goes on. And so, yeah, it's really interesting, but I think what we're doing is really cool as well.
This episode is sponsored by Hashbranch, the easiest way to mine Bitcoin in the US. Sourcing hardware and rack space usually is a mess. Bad deal structures, misaligned incentives, and no visibility after deployment. I have placed tens of thousands of ASICs in partnership with Hashbranch. What I like most is that they cut through the noise. Fair pricing, aligned terms, and access to hosting that actually works. Use code HashrateUp100, visit hashbranch.com today to get $100 off of each miner that you order.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the problems also come from, you know, the hosting operators. They're terrible at communication. The customers are terrible at understanding what is necessary to smoothly deploy the units. As you said, they just ship pallets. There might be the complete wrong units. They might have wrong power plugs. Nobody knows who the pallets belong to. They might draw too much power, like all of this stuff, right? And then a month later, the customer's like, "Hey, but I sent you 300 machines. Why are they not running yet?" You know, and then there's just disappointment all over the place. And so
Right.
I
And
think
nobody's happy in those scenarios.
exactly right. And also, I mean, you guys to speak about the customer benefit briefly, like you guys first of all make great hosters available to the marketplace, but then also the um, you are the entity that gets the bill from the hosting operator, right? And then even though you guys are obviously making a margin somewhere, right? You oftentimes are able to offer cheaper pricing, right? This is something that I often see, right? People are like, oh, but now there's this company in the middle. You know, isn't this not very, very expensive, especially when hash price is $41? Those are the questions that come up. But it's actually counterintuitive because the prices that you would regularly get if the hoster were to offer the service to you with 5 machines would be super high because they have to somehow cover the cost and the issues that we just described, right? So hosting is going to be 8 cents, you know, or I don't know, even worse if your energy bill goes up now, 8.5 cents or whatever. And you guys are actually offering cheaper pricing. So there's that also. What would you say, Tom, are the main challenges to the business model that you guys run? What would you say is the toughest part?
Oh, if I had to pick one, there's a lot of difficulty. I would say just in this industry in general. The way I like to think about it is like, you know, we're a Bitcoin mining investment platform. That's how we think about ourselves. And our goal, like our vision for the company, is we're trying to make Bitcoin mining a, you know, globally investable asset that like anyone can invest in and actually perform, you know, what they expect. I think this is like simply said, but not simply done. So the way we think about it is there's like what I call like the core 4 pieces of like, you know, any, we'll say investment generally, but in mining specifically, it's the first piece is modeling. So it's like, how do you model this as a whole, right? It's very complicated. You have to understand like, ASIC prices and how they change. You have to understand available like, hosting structures and all the trade-offs. You have to understand, uptime dynamics and repair dynamics. You also have to then understand like hash price dynamics, and then you have to think about, you know, if anyone could just predict where hash price is going to be in the next 12 to 24 months, like we wouldn't be here. So you have to like play around with scenarios and understand like how do you think about the modeling of this as even an investment to start. And so we help our customers like actually model this. And when I say customers, I think of both, the individuals and businesses who are deploying capital into mining, as well as the operators, right? They need to understand how to model their own rack space and trade-offs between taking fixed rate clients versus profit share clients versus like there's a big modeling aspect when thinking about any investment. So we start there. The next piece is really access to these opportunities, right? Our industry is very fragmented, and so opportunities exist. They're not very well surfaced, right? So you have like high quality hosting operations that maybe don't people don't have access to, or you have stranded inventory of hardware that's like well priced and high quality, but it doesn't have it's not being surfaced. So the second piece is like access to these opportunities. The third piece is really the execution, right? So it's like you've built your model, you've got access to it. Now what? How do we actually do this, right? And the execution is not just like accepting the payment and signing the contract. It's like that's the easy part. The tough part is like the procurement of hardware, moving it to where it needs to go, the logistics around the deployment, getting things configured correctly, communicating with customers, and then when something goes wrong, RMA or repairs or downtime, like how does that happen throughout the life cycle? And then the final piece, which is like one of the things we're really excited about, is the reporting aspect. It's like, all right, I've modeled it, I got the access to it, I executed. How do I talk to my tax guy about this? Like how do I understand if it's performing in the reporting? So the reason I highlight those core four things, and this is how we think about it, is those are challenging problems to solve, and each one of those is almost a different business entirely, in terms of like how you're delivering this and who you're talking to and what you're optimizing for. But we really believe that in order to invest in this asset class and do it well, all four of those need to be in sync, and they all four need to talk to each other and be consistent across the journey. So I'd say like to tie this to your question, the main challenge is that the four requirements to have an investment go well are very complicated and disjointed. And so like we're trying to bring those together into a consistent experience, and that's difficult. So, and I can give examples on like ways that each of those can go wrong and what we do, but that's how we think about it.
Okay, no, I mean, I would love to hear the examples. And I
Yeah.
think underlying, at least from my point of view, there's always a trust, right? People want to trust that their significant investment, however many zeros are attached to the first number, is well taken care of. And hosters, I often get this question, people don't just turn the machine, switch the pool, and you never hear from them again. How do you build that trust with the problems and the examples that you just mentioned?
Yeah. So on the trust piece, this has been like core since day one. Is like this can only to get a little philosophical. It's like you have Bitcoin, which is rules without rulers, and then you have mining that kind of like is fundamental underneath the Bitcoin network. And there's like this implicit trust in the system, but like you have to be able to translate that into trust with like all the counterparties, right? And there's a ton of counterparties, but the two that we focus on, we'll say the hosting operators and the actual clients. The first thing we do before trying to bridge the trust between the two is we try to develop trust independently. So like with our operators, we are really working to solve their actual problems day to day. Like it's not just sending them hardware, it's all these things I've described. Like, and because we've, I think, done a great job at like identifying the problems and feeling the pain and then actually solving them, that's gone a long way to develop really strong trust between Hashbranch and the actual operating partners that we work with, where it's not just they trust us to do the right thing, but they trust in our willingness and ability to like actually empathize with their problems and build for them. And so what this turns into is when we have suggestions or when we have improvements or when we have things that go wrong, but we need to solve them together. They trust our integrity, and they trust that we're actually trying to do this for them because we've solved a lot of their problems, and we continue to do so. And we're, the bar for us on operators is continuing to increase. But the reason is not just because we're trying to get better for our clients. The reason is because operators are getting better across the board. They are learning. A lot of these groups, they started, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and like the industry then to now, it's like completely different. But they have improved independently. Like they are really trying to do the right thing. And as that has increased, our bar for what we expect has increased as well. So we develop trust with the operators by solving their problems. With customers, we it's like the exact same thing. We're actually trying to identify, like, before even someone gets into mining, the first thing is like, what are you expecting out of this? What are your goals? If you're thinking like, I'm going to put money in this and then 10x, my money in 3 months, and if it doesn't happen, I can't pay my mortgage. Like, that is not a good expectation. I'm going to stop you right there. Like, let me tell you how this industry actually works. And I think that goes a long way with like they customers realize like we're not, just here trying to sell them on something. We're actually trying to help them along their journey, because we do believe in investing in mining, and we think this is a great opportunity. But like setting expectations from day one, I think has been huge. And then I think customers also see that we're building for them, right? So everything we do, we think about like, what does our customer need, and what can we do to make their lives easier and help them with those core four: modeling, access, execution, and reporting. And that's gone a long way. So we establish trust with these independent counterparties through Hashbranch, and then after that, it's actually pretty simple to bridge the trust between those counterparties, because like we're an open book, right? Like if like customers are getting views to the exact data that we're seeing, and we use data to kind of tell the story. It's difficult at times, and it's getting better, but like I think they trust in what we're giving them, and I think obviously it's not for very small clients. Sometimes it's not tenable for them to do a site visit or all these things, but all of our sites, like we've been to the sites, we've taken videos, we're on standby with these operators, meaning like we're in the same chat threads with the ground team that they use day to day, and our team is in there, basically working on behalf of our clients. And so we're always willing to like introduce customers to operators above a certain threshold where it's like everyone knows kind of everyone's role in this journey, and we don't hide that, right? We're not trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. It's just, this is a complicated problem. So yeah, let me pause there. I got examples as well, but that's a lot.
Yeah, no, dude. Let's keep pulling on that thread. I mean, what's your favorite example? What's your favorite story?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do 4 examples. We'll do one of the core 4. So like modeling. So an example on the modeling side is like we've seen both like offers that get put out onto the market that are just unrealistic in terms of the expectations they're setting with customers. Like that's just not a good.
What do you mean, Tom?
It
does it not only cost $40,000 to mine Bitcoin?
Yeah, like there's exactly, like there's ways to frame this and that are just, I think, disingenuous, frankly. And I think what happens is like a customer will come in with the wrong expectations, and then no matter how well it performs, given the true, strategy, like they're never going to be happy. And so like an example of poor modeling is like we've seen clients come to us with a deal, for example, even like at a very large scale. It's like, hey, like here's something I'm evaluating. What do you think? And when we take the exact data, put it into our model and show them like, hey, this is actually what you're missing. And just like, have you thought about this? And I think the lights, and we're not trying to like, call anyone out specifically, but it's just modeling is hard. And if you like have the wrong model going in, like you're never going to be happy. It's great to model if like difficulty goes down and Bitcoin 5x's, like, yeah, everything's great, but that's just not the reality, like historically. So that's like one example on modeling, how you can kind of set yourself up for failure. On the access piece, like I would say just a simple example is maybe getting forced into a contract because it's the only one that you have available to you. Like maybe you purchased hardware from someone who's actually like maybe a good hardware vendor, and gives you good hardware, and then you buy the hardware without having the rack space ready to go. And it's not necessarily even the broker, the hardware broker's fault here, because they're here to sell you hardware. But I think a lot of times people will buy the hardware and they go, okay, now I need to go find where to put it. And we've had like so many customers come to us and say, hey, I got, 100 units of like expensive hardware sitting on a pallet. Like, I don't know where to put it. So that's how access can go really poorly. And if you don't have that ready to go, like, you know,
Yeah.
you can buy the
I
hardware all
talk.
you want, but if it's not
I
ready to
talk
run,
about this. I'll talk about this exact, or do talk about this exact thing in like this proof of prudence thing, where it's just like sign your hosting contract first. The machines will not disappear. But yeah, sorry. Keep going.
yeah. So that's on, examples on those two. On the execution side, like there's a lot that can go wrong, but like one really interesting one is, so like the reality of how these ASIC servers are manufactured and distributed into the industry is like is insane, right? So there's like a handful of OEMs, and some of the top OEMs, like we'll say, Bitmain specifically, um, their units, like brand new, half the time show up, 10% dead on arrival, like from from the manufacturer under warranty. Like they show up on site with 10% of them, hey, these need to get, repaired, or they have warranty. Now, the OEMs have a pretty good warranty program, generally speaking, for units that are commonly used, and we found the turnaround time isn't horrible. But like there are examples where like you buy units from the OEM of a specific make and model, and then they have a failure, or they're, hey, we need to kick it off an RMA. And then the OEM specifically will go, oh, we don't have any repair companies that can repair these specific machines. And you're like, okay, then what was the warranty for? So there's like all these things that can go wrong.
Yeah, or
And generally,
100
like what we
days,
do
or
is
like you buy the machine and 100 days of the warranties are missing already.
exactly. So there's a lot of nuance there, on execution, and one of the, that's an example of how things can go wrong. And what we do is, we just reduce the friction as much as possible for
Mm.
customers, and our RMA turnaround time just through our standard process is pretty dang fast.
Hmm.
But even in the cases where it's like RMA, like we're fighting the OEM to get something through their standard warranty process, like we'll find a non-warranty repair company to get it done, because like our clients need their machines back. And those are the things you see that can go wrong on the execution side. And there's a lot more, but that's one that's like really top of mind right now. And honestly, I'm really excited for new OEMs and other OEMs to like lift their standards as well, and like really start solving these problems, because it is not acceptable that 10% of units show up dead on arrival direct from
Talk about this
manufacturer.
all the
And
time,
it,
all the time.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean
that's
everybody's
that's
like,
direct. Yeah,
it's Bitmain is the behemoth, and there was no competition for the longest time, and I'm very happy that's changing.
yeah. And then on the last piece on reporting, so this one's been kind of top of mind, just given that in the US at least, like last month was the, filing for extension on taxes, and then you kind of have end of year tax strategies kind of going into 2026. We found that like actually reporting on these investments, so like simply communicating with your CPA or communicating with your financial advisor on, hey, I have this deployment over here. Can you roll that into my, existing, wealth management strategy, or my existing kind of um, tax strategy that we're looking at? It's like back to square one. It's like, what even is this? Like where did you recognize revenue? Is it at the pool? Is it when they hit the wallet? How many wallets do you have? And that's only revenue coming in. When you start to think about expenses, like, hey, like where are all, what were the hosting bills? Do you have a record of them? Like, how do you know how it's performing? How do you optimize this? So like once you get in the mining game, like things can go smoothly, but then when you actually start trying to report on it, it's a whole new thing. So we're really excited about the stuff we're working on to
Yeah.
like make that much simpler. But yeah, those are my examples,
I
and I
think
could probably talk for.
while you were naming them, it kind of dawned on me that I think a really good way to describe what it is that you're doing is also to say you're smoothing out all of the imbalances and all of the nascency of this industry. This
Yeah,
is not a 50-year-old industry where the mistakes have been made and processes have been adjusted across the board. There's so much still going wrong, so much malinformation, so much misinformation, so much missing education. and you guys are smoothing that out on both sides to make the process a bit more seamless, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about redeploy as well, Tom. I know you guys deployed 13,000 ASICs, S19s, if I'm not mistaken, older units. Do you want to talk to me about that deal? How old is that deal now? How many months has it been going? Has it, turned out to be what you wanted? Are both sides happy? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's start with kind of educating, the audience a little bit on like what is the idea behind redeploy and why is this important? So um, we think about this in terms of the life cycle of an ASIC server, right? And so generally speaking, when new servers hit the market, we're seeing like S21s, S23s are kind of like just on the horizon, right? New efficiency units or higher efficiency units. Generally speaking, those units start their life as soon as they're coming off the manufacturing line. They start their life at what we call like a Type 1 facility. And so a Type 1 facility is something that's high uptime. You might pay a bit of a premium for price, but it's high uptime, really efficient cooling. It's probably in maybe a northern climate where you're not running these as hot, but it's really designed to like maximize the like initial profitability of that machine because that's when it's most profitable, right? When it's brand new, it's off the manufacturing line. And so what happens is like after say a year or two, generally speaking, like that specific location or contract might not be profitable for that specific server. It can be in some markets, but generally speaking, after a year or two, you have one of two options. Either that server needs to be liquidated and sold to someone else, or it needs to move to another facility that we would call like a type 2 facility. So we have like type 1, type 2, and type 3. So type 2 is basically the next leg in that machine's journey. We see these facilities in places that they basically will offer maybe a lower base rate, but it's a lower uptime. So you're kind of trading uptime for cost of hosting or power. And then sometimes those are layered in with like a profit share component and maybe even underclocking to optimize that machine. So when you structure those second, the type 2 facilities and those contracts, now all of a sudden that machine that was not profitable in a type 1 after 1 or 2 years, it can remain profitable at a type 2 facility, and it can remain profitable for another year or two. Now it might not be as profitable obviously as the market has changed, but it's better than either just having the machine sit idle, which is what happens to a lot of these things. So and a type 3 is just an extension of that, where maybe you have like much lower uptime. Think like stranded energy or surplus solar or things like that, much lower base rate. So it's just kind of ratcheting that down. And this specific deal was kind of a transition from a type 1 to a type 2 facility. So we had a customer who had tens of thousands of machines that had been new at a time and were had run for 2 or 3 years in a specific facility, type 1 facility, and then they came to us because they and we actually worked with you on this deal, but it was like, hey, these machines are going to be decommissioned at this type 1 facility. There's some nuances about they had been immersed and they need to kind of go through a repair pipeline. But like, what are our options, right? And the two options were literally, well, do we sell them or what else? And so what we were able to identify was a type 2 facility that had a unique structured contract and dynamic in their capacity that allowed these machines to basically be cleaned, reapplied thermal paste, and then redeployed about a year ago at this facility. And they've been running for the last, I think, 11 months at this point, profitable the entire time, right? So they and I'll add some nuance there. I
Much
think
better than selling.
when we did this, much
Yeah.
better than selling. I mean, if you can sell at a good market price at the time, that's great as well. But a lot of times it's hard to sell 13 or 20,000 units, right? It takes a while. So in this example, we had I looked at Hashprice 11 months ago. It was about $50 to $55 a petahash when these machines were getting decommissioned. Now, if you assume like a stock hosting rate, call it 6.5 to 7 cents, probably what these were running at, maybe a little less, but that was basically market. These machines were more or less making $0 like at the time. It was something like per machine, you're paying $150 per month. you're making about $150 a month. And as we've seen since then, hash price has basically just trended down. It hasn't dropped tremendously, but it's like, I mean, I guess as of today it has, but it's been hovering, in that 45 to 50. So theoretically, had they stayed there, they probably would have made zero money, potentially lost money because some machines would have probably gone down.
And just to clarify, Tom, you cannot just turn the machines off, right? Because the hoster makes their money by selling you electricity. So you can't just say, "Hey, I'm not profitable. I'll turn them off." Sorry, I'll throw that in there.
Yeah, you can, but then the host will fill it with racks, fill the racks with other units. So like, I mean, a lot of times with this amount of units, though, you don't have the luxury of just turning them off because that's a lot of power consumption. That's the whole business model of the host. So, so that was the market at the time. And I would say like confidently, and the reason I know this is because like this was a profit share structure, and there has been profit every single month generated from this strategy consistently for the last, I think 10 or 11 months. And we think that'll continue, into the future. So we basically took this like asset that was not yielding anything, and just by finding the correct facility, a type 2 facility, it has now yielded for an extra year. So like when you think about that in the context of an investment, like that is insane. So this one has been going, I think, extremely well. We're really excited about it. I will say these were S19J Pros. We're just now seeing that like J Pros are probably the lowest efficiency that would probably work at a type 2 facility in the US today. That efficiency, threshold is going to go up over time. So yeah, I'll pause there.
What do we do with them after when they're not profitable in the type 2 facility, Tom?
Yeah, so it's kind of the same old game, right? So you have one of two options. Assuming the machines are still operable at this point, I think these machines have been alive for 4 to 5 years, right? It's when they were released. So given that you might have another year or two if the machines have been taken care of, you have one of two options. You can sell them, or you can deploy them at a type 3 facility. Now, type 3 facilities there are few and far between in the US, and we're working on developing partnerships to identify these, where you basically have a much lower uptime. So as an example, the uptime at this type 2 facility was hovering around like, I think 70 to 80%, something like that, with a lower base rate and a profit share. A type 3 facility, realistically, in order to get the rate low enough that these are going to squeeze out profit, you're going to need to be probably like a 30 to 40, maybe 50% uptime, but you're ratcheting down. And there are those that exist in the US. And like I said, we're working on those, but your options are basically we sell these, or we deploy them in type 3. Potentially we ship them overseas, but you kind of are starting to see the end of the ASIC lifecycle. And yeah, so you still have options. The options are less so, but you're in a better position now because you've continued to mine on these, right?
Yeah. BitX, solomining.de, got it. Premium, made in Germany. You want to go fancy? Go for NerdX or NerdQX++ for a lot of power. Worldwide shipping. Check out solomining.de today. Plus, importantly, the reinvestment into the logistics and the refurbishment of the machine has paid itself back also, right? So typically you will see in the type 1 facility, ideally these machines will pay themselves off. And then in the type 2 facility is where they make free cash flow. But obviously you have to reinvest a little to get them there and to get them running between each stage, right? So you got to consider that also. Yeah, for
Totally.
sure. But I love that. It's talking about that ASIC funnel. Definitely something we can do an entire different episode about sometime.
Yeah.
The last topic I wanted to touch on with you, Tom, was the dashboard that you just developed and released for Hashbranch. Anybody can go to dashboard.hashbranch.com and log in, create an account. And if they have a fleet with you, can see their fleet running, can see invoices, can see all kinds of stuff. Run me through what you can see already and run me through what the first sort of things are that you want to add.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming. One of the things we realized, maybe we knew this early on, but kind of recently, was like we're doing so much behind the scenes, and a lot of our software that we've built and a lot of the things we put into place, they live kind of out of view of the customer, right? So like the customer just experiences the end result, and generally that's a good result, but they don't have the visibility into what's actually occurring behind the scenes. And so we've had a what we call our admin portal that internally we use, and this is how we orchestrate everything and manage uptime and all this stuff. But we didn't have a way that customers could log in and actually see the same data that we were seeing every day. So we recently, like I think last week, pushed our kind of version 1 of our dashboard, and we started with just some of the basics. So we have data of basically we pull in 3 data sources. We pull in the data from the pool that the machines are configured to give you kind of we'll say the revenue information about like hash rate that's been contributed to the pool, the trends around that. We pull in the cost data. So this is like all the information about like the hosting contract and the actual bills and everything. So you can see like, okay, here are all my bills that I've paid, and here's how they actually map to my specific machines, for example. And we've pulled in what we call like our fleet management data. So this is stuff directly from our backend system that gives you information about, all right, we have these many machines kind of queued for deployment. We have this many machines deployed. We have this many out for repair. And it just gives you like a snapshot of the status of your deployment. And like generally speaking, most customers will have like a couple percent of their fleet in some repair pipeline. That's just the nature of this game, but they didn't have visibility to that. So we've kind of surfaced that in the dashboard. And then we give customers like very clear information about, here are all the serial numbers of all your machines. Here are, the contracts they're associated with. Here's the actual machine type, and here's how that's related to, the bills that you pay. We found like, we didn't realize this, but like serial number tracking is like a really unsolved problem in the industry, where you have, these weird issues where like some firmware on some machines will report 1 digit incorrectly on the serial number. And then like that gets, consumed in Foreman. And then if you're using, or any other miner management system, and then if you're using that to set your pool data, like there's all these ways that serial numbers can just fall through the cracks. When you layer on like, these are the serial numbers that I got from the hardware vendor, and then these are the serial numbers that were at the facility, and then like these are the machines that are at the pool, there's gaps, right? And so we've kind of brought all that into a singular view. What we're doing kind of next, and should come out in the next probably like 2 or 3 weeks, is we're pulling in the actual ground level data from the miner management system that your machines are plugged into. So we're going to start with an integration with Foreman. It's kind of one of the most common ones that our operators use. But we have operators that have rolled their own, and we're going to be pulling that data in as well. So very soon, you'll be able to see not just your pool information and your revenue, you'll be able to see your cost information from your bills. You'll be able to see your operational performance of the machine. This is really exciting for us because it just gives you a like crystal clear view of what's actually happening across all aspects of this investment. And we're really excited about that. I think, it's a fun project. And I think the thing that's really interesting is, if you have a fleet deployed with us, you get this because that's just how we provide it to our customers. We're exploring ideas of, even if you don't have a fleet with us, you can plug in and monitor your fleet in the same way that our customers do. So that's something that doesn't exist yet, but assuming we have the data feeds, we can give you the same access that others have. So.
Yeah, I love it. It completely ties into the beginning of our discussion, where we talked about trust and the relationship between hosting operator and customer, right? Because transparency, and again, I talk about this in the Proof of Prudence series on my website all the time. If you don't have that visibility, there is no don't trust, verify
Right.
option. Right, all you have is the trust factor. And oftentimes people want to know, okay, my host is telling me that my machine has been down then and then, but in the dashboard I can see the downtime was actually different. So now there's a conversation about it,
Right.
And that just adds to the trust factor for sure.
Right. And when you have hosts who are deploying, like our hosts don't only host our machines, right? They have their own customers. A lot of them will self mine as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about the scale of this, right? You have like at a 20 megawatt facility, you have on the order of like 6,000 independent servers, right? And ideally they're all the same, but they're really not in reality. You have maybe 15 to 20 different server types, different variations within those server types. And then on top of that, even if you have like 10 different customers, that's 10 different pools, assuming they're all mining to the same pool, but customers might have different pools. So like there's a lot of ways that you could just have a simple mistake where these two batches of units came in at the same time and accidentally I pointed these to this pool and these to this pool, or the operator pointed, whatever, that like we catch for our customers, and we fix that before they even need to be like, why is my machine down? We're like, it's not. It's and then you kind of layer in like if it's gone through a repair pipeline, even through RMA, generally they will adjust the pool as as part of their test, right? So sometimes like it's just the pool configuration that's failing on the machine. So they'll run like a test, pool to make sure that it validates and whatnot. Sometimes they show up and they still have the pool from the repair company on the machine. And it's like, hey, my machine's there, it's running, I've got to pay the host for it, but like the pool's wrong. So we're kind of getting ahead of a lot of these problems before our customers have to worry about it. And I think by bringing all this data into a single platform where you have visibility, like it really solves a lot of this stuff.
Tom, let's do a quick round of rapid fire before we sign off and you tell people where to find you. Good?
Let's do it.
Cool. What KPI do you check every single day?
We look at our total machines deployed with us, and we look at basically what we call is like coverage. So we look at, of the machines deployed with us, how many of them are not hashing? And then of the ones that are not hashing, how many do we have a plan of action for? Meaning like we need to know why it's not hashing. It might not hash for a certain reason, but we look at coverage to make sure that at least if a machine is not hashing, something is being done about it. Right. That is our like number one KPI for our what we call customer success and performance, is like 100% coverage of issues that are occurring. Okay. That's probably like the top one. There's a bunch of others, but that's
coverage. I like it. What's your favorite hosting region in the US and why?
I'm really excited about the Pacific Northwest. I live in Idaho, and my journey started, I wanted to mine here in Idaho, and I don't know if we're really the Pacific Northwest, but we're adjacent. And there's a lot of really cool things being done in the Pacific Northwest, from, just surplus hydroelectricity, cool climate. And there's some great operators up here. So that's probably my, it's probably because I live up here, and I was on vacation over the last weekend driving through Washington, and on one of the routes I took, just happened to pass one of our operators, kind of stopped by and went and looked, but it was cool, kind of nice. Close to home.
Awesome. What's the biggest mistake miners make before choosing a host?
The biggest mistake, what we talked about, is like buying the hardware and then figuring it out. Basically thinking, oh man, I got to get it while it's hot because the prices are good, and then not, like, that's probably the number one mistake.
Where should I send this?
Second would be,
I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Second would be
poor expectations, not really understanding what you're actually doing. Yeah.
All right. Amazing. Thank you, Tom. This was Tom, Chief Aggregator at Hashbranch. Thank you so much for your time. Tell people where to find you, man.
Yeah, you can find us at hashbranch.com, all one word. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter as well, just at Hashbranch. And then you can find us on Telegram. We use Telegram, although we don't love Telegram. So those are probably the best places to find us.
Nobody in the industry loves Telegram, but we all use it.
I know.
Tom, Thank you so much for your time. Thanks again for making this show a possibility. And I'll see you in Vegas.
All right. Thanks, Jesse.